like me, anything that is a bit new and different, it takes a little while to sort of process, should we do this? Should we not do this? Right? So I'm guessing if you're here today, you maybe haven't tried crowdfunding, but just anyone around the room has tried crowdfunding, raise your hands. Jake has, and he's going to tell you about it. Um, I'm guessing, I know that many of you have cameras off and stuff, but I'm guessing most of us haven't tried it before, and that's okay. So we want to go through the benefits and the challenges that exist with it. I think that you'll find that there's a space for it, but definitely not an all-in space, right? So with that, let's get started with the definition of crowdfunding. What is crowdfunding? Really, it's intended to use the power of social networking and the internet to help spread a message. And it's not only used in nonprofits. A lot of startup businesses and those in growth mode use different types of crowdfunding to generate funds for their organizations. However, it's a method of raising small amounts of money from a large number of people, and almost always the internet is involved with it. Though I did find in some of my research that there are places and people who have done it without that, which I found fascinating. So we've got different types: donation-based, where people donate money without expecting anything in return; reward-based, where your backers receive a product or a service in return for their contribution. And those are the top two that we'll be focused on as it relates to charitable giving, right? But there's also equity-based and debt-based crowd lending. And so if you've heard about that, those are more often going to be like a startup business that are utilizing those, where investors are receiving ownership shares in the company, or where money is loaned in return for interest payments and eventual repayment of a loan. So I learned something new in this process on those, but our focus today, obviously, is on the crowdfunding in the nonprofit space. So I want to start with just a couple of simple examples. On the next couple of slides, you'll see this particular one. If you see, obviously, it's always great when you're doing something online to have a photo, an image, right, that can help people start to understand who you are and what you're doing. The historic welcoming of the tour from Indonesia, right? We've got a goal, and there's 2 days left in the goal. Like, that's always seeing that thermometer of sorts is always helpful. We've got 72 donors, $11,340 raised, and look, I can click on that donate now. Absolutely, if I want to do that. It's very simple, it's clean. And definitely something that is easy to use. Next slide, please, Trish. This one, soccer field, I can't even say that word, Pakhitmi village, right? So you see the players, you see real people, they're trying to build a soccer field, right? And we have a goal of 23,715. We're very specific, it's time bound, right? And we see that 123 people have supported it already. And there's also, I like on a lot of crowdfundings, we know that they're going to recognize the people. I think that's a good practice when they're able to recognize others that have already done it. 70 people just donated. That share, obviously, on social media, that's super important to have a share button. But always that donate now prevalent. Again, but just really great to have a photo to show it. So again, clean, simple, specific, and goals tied with that. And we'll get into that in just a minute. Next slide, please. This slide is actually, Jake has done this one. Jake, do you want to just share a little bit about this one?
Yeah, sure. We set up like a virtual performance opportunity during the pandemic. And I had a lot of information on the theory of how to do crowdfunding, but I had actually not tried it before 2020 personally. So this one was really successful. We raised $48,000 in about 5 weeks or so. And I can talk about more of the mechanics in a minute when we kind of get into like how you actually use these. But it was pretty simple. It was mostly like $5 and $10 donations. There were some larger ones. I think the average gift size was like $20. And it was a decent amount of work. I will say that's the one thing, like, in compared to like major gift fundraising or getting corporate donations over a period of time, not going to be as good ROI wise on the dollar, but especially when we were in a position where you couldn't be out and you couldn't talk to people in person because we were like right in the thick of the pandemic. You can see May 1st, 2020. So that was like, very much the deepest part of the pandemic. This was a great way to get people to connect, and people had a lot of fun with it. So we have kind of gone through this process and had some success in it. We just learned that it was an incredible amount of work to do in the meantime.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to walk through just really quickly some of the pros and the cons, and then Jake and Shauna are both going to share some specific platforms and how to use them, and the pros and cons of each of the different platforms, should you choose to use this as part of your fundraising strategy. So like Jake said, quick and easy to set up usually, right? It's a, hey, we decided today there's a need, we need to do this now, we can do it quickly. There's not the need for a lot of planning and preparation like a lot of other fundraising strategies do require, right? So that's a pro, obviously. A wide reach, right? You're able, and like any social network, you're able to reach people who may not be physically in your community or may have never heard of you because they may be 2 and 3 people removed, but it can spread very quickly with proper planning and execution to have people share beyond your networks. So you can definitely have impressions of people that you just otherwise would never have had the opportunity to get in front of. It's generally a low cost, right? It's typically has low fees. Most of the funds are going to go directly to the nonprofit, and it usually doesn't cost anything unless you actually do bring in funds. So if you nothing ventured, nothing gained, I guess, on that. If you go through it and you don't actually bring in any revenue, you're not having an expense. So definitely an opportunity to give it a try on certain scenarios. It helps provide feedback, right? It can show you on what resonates with donors. It can help you refine your messaging, the appeal. Oftentimes we just don't know. We think people are going to be really excited about something, but if we tweak something just a little bit, it becomes more successful. So it's a great opportunity to sort of quickly get some feedback on your messaging and what resonates best with your donor base. And of course, it builds a sense of community. Like Jake said, in the middle of the pandemic, he was able to very quickly mobilize people who were all, really looking for that connection to something that was important to them. So it can definitely create that sense of community. People can share, I support this. I hope, it really does fall align with our volunteer community-based fundraising models, where we're really focusing on volunteers saying, join me, this is important to me. So this is just a much quicker way for people to get the message out and share. And I think it's a great complement to that personal ask of, hey, this is important to me. Would you consider joining me as part of a giving club to support this project or this organization? It definitely falls in line with that. So now that we've walked through the pros, let's talk a little bit about the cons in general for crowdfunding. It does require that effort to maintain it, right? You definitely have to do a little work up front to get it out. And then you have to remind people, right? You've got to keep pushing it out during your time frame, or it may fizzle. And even if you do all the things right, it's definitely not guaranteed to succeed. So it's absolutely possible that you go through what you think makes a whole lot of sense. You do all the things to optimize what your, what your goals are. You got all the right people involved, they share it, and it just is a bust, right? That's possible that may happen. Why is that? Well, because it could be competitive. There could be a saturated market. I mean, we have so many things coming at us every single day, especially on social media and in the internet, that people just are kind of deaf to it sometimes, right? Like I can't even think about that. And if it's at the wrong moment in time, and it's very saturated, you may not really have a chance even before you started, because it is so competitive. Some of the platforms, and again, Jake and Shauna will be talking through this in a bit, have limited control of. There are varying degrees of the control that you have. There's strict rules and guidelines. And so that may end up not working for your message and what you're looking to achieve. And it may not be sustainable past one-time push, right? It is definitely something that I think if you determine it makes sense as a part of your overall fundraising strategy, that you could go through it and have a very successful time, and you're like, wow, let's do this every week. Yeah, not probably going to work the same way. So use it selectively for things that do have that time-bound specific focus. And I think there is an opportunity to raise some quick, important funds and to garner, a new base of donors. So there are benefits to it, but it may not be sustainable. So don't go all in and make it your overall fundraising strategy just yet. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Jake to dive into some more of the platform details specifically.
Great. So we love to do like top 10 lists because everyone loves base 10 numbers and things, but there are really only 8 platforms that we think you should consider. So this is our top 8 in no particular order. A lot of them have different pros and cons depending on what your needs are. So these are ones that we have actually messed around with and tried with a client or gotten feedback directly. So this is not just hearsay. We have some real data on what's good, what's bad. Also, the pricing is kind of hard to find. Like you go to some of these websites and they're not super transparent about what it costs. So we did a deep dive on what all of them actually cost and have all those included too. So this gives you, if you're thinking about crowdfunding and you want to try it at some point, this presentation should give you a really good idea about which ones you should actually use. So these are our top 8 in no particular order. We're just going to kind of go through them. If you have any questions, definitely stop me. Okay, the one that probably everyone knows about, the super common, very, very large one is GoFundMe. I know at some point you've seen something, you might have even donated to a GoFundMe at some point. A lot of times used for crisis fundraising, and not just in like a large scale, but say someone like a coworker has a house fire or something like that. People use this as kind of the go-to platform for that. It's not necessarily just optimized for nonprofits. Definitely one of the best options overall for peer-to-peer because it's so easy to share. It embeds directly on social media. Facebook particularly being the one that is the most common to get shared around. People can click direct and donate from there. It's even a little bit cleaner than Facebook's like native built-in fundraising platform. And it's a lot easier to collect that data. So it's good for specific things that are shorter. It's very, very simple. The tools are not very powerful, but that's kind of by design. This is like a quick churn and burn type thing where, hey, I need to set it up in a day and it's got to be done in a week. Great option for that. Some of the downsides that we found for GoFundMe specifically for charities is it's a little tricky in terms of how you want to customize it. There's not that many options. Like say you want it to be around a specific cause, or you want it to go extend the time frame a little bit. Like you don't have that much customization. So it's a little bit tricky trying to figure out, can you fit it exactly within what you're doing right now? Way less customization in terms of what it looks like. Some of these sites are really good about letting you use your branding package. So your colors, your fonts, you can set up your logo in different places so it looks like it's your website. GoFundMe is very GoFundMe branded. So it's their logo all over the place. You might have some text that describes your organization, but for the most part, very, very specific to the GoFundMe brand, which is fine. Pricing is 1.9 processing fee of whatever you get, plus an additional 20 cents per every transaction. So obviously that incentivizes like higher donation amounts, 500, 1,000, whatever. But if people are giving $5, $10, there's the free version. There's also, you can do 2.9%, which is just like the GoFundMe Pro version. And you get some more advanced features, some more customization. It's a little clunkier. We recommend kind of the free version for this just because it's designed to be the easy, quick and dirty setup. So if you want something quick, you want it to run for just a week or 2 weeks, you are not a techie person, this might be a great option for you because it's very, very quick in terms of just getting it up there. Not a lot of customization, but not bad. All right, next one. Indiegogo. So this is the one that I actually chose, and this is the one that I was able to raise around $50,000 doing. One of my personal favorites when I did a lot of research on it back in 2020, I selected it because there's a lot of the things that it had that I liked. It lets you keep fundraising past the goal, which a lot of platforms don't let you do. You would think like, oh, we hit our $20,000, we hit our $50,000. And if people want to keep giving, they can keep giving. Most of them will cap it out and they'll close the campaign and prevent you from accepting more donations, which we know we always want to go for goal in fundraising. So Indiegogo is like, nah, you can keep going. We have advanced tools for that. Like it sets it up so that you can go as far as you want. There's a couple different versions. You can have a fixed goal. So the goal has to be met. And if it isn't met within whatever time frame you set, 4 weeks or whatever, everyone just gets a full refund. So you're like, hey, y'all, this is super low risk. Like donate $5, $10. If we don't reach our goal and we can't make this thing happen, you automatically get all of your money back. So very flexible on the donor side, a little less flexible on the charity side. But you can also set it up the other way to say you keep the money regardless, and it's transparent about that up front. So you have tools where you can customize and set it up, and it lets you know that in advance. So a little bit more customization there depending on what you want to do. I really liked the interface on this one, which is why I ended up going with it. In terms of cons, it's a little bit more expensive. Like they're taking a 5% off the top plus a 3% processing fee and 30 cents per transaction. On top of that, it takes forever to get your payout. Like it was probably 2.5 months before I even saw the first payment. And then they continue to wait and they don't even give it you all at once. So say we raised $48,000, like we got a payout of like 13,000, and then we got another payout of 10, and then we got another payout of 12. They give you these kind of weird amounts like every 3 or 4 weeks, waiting on people to maybe refund, and they give everyone the option to get their money back at any time. So they're like holding that money as collateral in case they have to refund people. And that's one of those things that's like, that's kind of annoying. But because it was low stakes for us anyways, and we were just building a virtual platform to play music together, it wasn't very high stakes. So we could take that risk. So I really like this one. Just know that you're going to get more features and you're going to pay for those features too. 5 plus 3% plus 30 cents. Okay, the next one's Donately. This one obviously is much more kind of customized, built for, designed for nonprofits. Like it's kind of with the charity in mind. Less people use this who are trying to do like a for-profit startup or have an invention that they want to green light or something like that. This is specifically for that. It's one of the, there's a couple in there. Fundly is another one where they kind of designed it with the charity in mind and hopefully to have tools that maximize that. One of the best things about this one is it's mega cheap. It's $49 a month and then just a 2% platform fee. And then there's also a version where you can just do the free plan and it just a flat 4%. So nice and simple. It's just whatever you raise, we take 4% off the top, which is much less than some of the other platforms that are in that space. It's fairly basic. You don't have a lot of customization. The donation form website integration was great. So you can put a Donately box in your website natively if you use like Squarespace or WordPress or Wix. So that's kind of a cool feature. So it's like, hey, I want to do this, but I don't want to host it on Donately's site. I want to host it on my site. Can I drive traffic to my own webpage? Yes, Donately is one of the few platforms that lets you do that. They also have a really high reputation for customer service. So say you're not techie and you're super lost and you have a question, their like chat response is very, very good, especially compared to some of those bigger companies. Weirdly enough, you'd think the bigger companies would be able to invest more in like customer service team reps. Generally with these, the bigger the company, the less good and the slower the customer service is because you have more people who don't know what they're doing and the wait times are long. Donately a little smaller. They're mostly dealing with staff from nonprofits. So you're getting pretty good information back if you have questions. In terms of the cons, say you do get a bunch of donations to this, the donor management integration, like the data collection side is really bad. Like honestly, it is so tough to collect the information from people. It doesn't export nicely into a CSV file. You can't customize it. The tracking process for getting those donations in is very manual. So say you're using this as a way to expand out and we just want to capture a bunch of new donors at whatever level. This is kind of a pipeline growing tool that we're using. Indiegogo and some of those other ones have these beautiful CSVs that you can import and dump right into your donor database, automatically puts all the fields in correctly. Donately has none of that. They're like, yeah, you want to do it yourself? That's fine. Those are features that cost us money. We're not going to pass that cost on to you, but you don't get to have that feature as a result. So depending on what you want and depending on what your goals are, that might be a great option for you because it's definitely cheaper. It's definitely cleaner and simple. But for me, I like to be able to track that data so that I can hopefully upgrade those donors over time, or use it as a way to collect new donors, people who've never given to our organization before, and it doesn't do a great job with that. All right, next. Patreon. This one's a little bit of an offshoot, but I did want to mention it because it is one of the biggest ones in the world. This typically is used for content creators, people who have a YouTube channel or are Instagram influencers, and they want to put content behind a paywall that's like really easy and clean. Like, hey, I have all this stuff that I put on social media, and I make videos about cars or about makeup or about gaming or whatever, all the categories that people do for that. But then I have like even better content that you can pay for, and you pay like $1 a month or $3 a month, and you get access to all of their Patreon content. So it's usually private individuals. It's really good about doing that, of like showing previews of content and then locking it behind a paywall, especially for media, videos, photos. Monthly donations are usually really low. Memberships are usually under $5 a month. So it's a way for content creators to fund themselves with 1,000 people giving them $5 a month, can get a good portion of their salary covered for consistent income. It's got a great integration with other tools like Discord and Zapier, if you use those platforms at all. This is the much more techie side. So if you're a computer person, this is a great option for you. They have a lot of advanced customization. And for the whole content creator, giving people a thing crowd, it's great. Not the best for nonprofits, but if you're a computer person and this is your thing, you probably already know about Patreon, and we do like it. It is a very fantastic platform. Just might not be the best fit specifically for a charity. It's not campaign based. That's the biggest thing. So this is, again, a little bit of an offshoot, a little bit different. It's not, we have 4 weeks to raise this much money. You can get as many memberships as you want on an ongoing basis. It's almost like a membership platform more than it is a campaign platform. There's not great website integration. They kind of host everything on patreon.com. It has to run on its own platform. It doesn't feel like a fundraising website, but you can get monthly donations through it much easily. It's also a little bit pricey. They take 8%. So basically you can say, I want to get, $1 a month or $3 a month from these people forever. But in exchange, they're taking 8 cents of that. There's also a payment processing fee. So definitely wanted to mention it because I know it's one of the most popular ones on the internet, but maybe not necessarily the best bet for a nonprofit. All right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Shauna to walk through these last 3 and then wrap us up.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much, Jake. So pros of Fundly, fantastic donor tracking system. They have great integration with their CRMs. They are going to be an organization that is versatile for their platforms, and is helpful for that for you. Feels like it's true fundraising platform as compared to what we just talked about, right? Cons, way more complex donor reporting system, which makes our lives more difficult. And I think really important to note with a lot of these is that the learning curve, if we spent that time with our donors and relationally fundraising, we could be way more successful as compared to trying to learn how to do all these processes. So that's just my little tidbit. You'll hear me kind of err on that side quite a bit here, but their fees are going to be higher than average, which I also struggle with the concept of spending money to raise money for a platform. Much rather would like to spend that money with the actual donor and have personal interaction, but I realize that that's not always the case. So Jake's got the breakdowns because he's fantastic within this world of 4.9% from every donation, plus a processing fee, plus a transactional fee, which feels a lot like our phone bills, right? So we're just tagging on additional fees in order to be able to raise money. So next slide there, please, Trish. So OneCause, it's event focused, which is great. And it's hyper focused on events. If you are choosing to use events to fundraise for, this is a great option for you. But again, it's kind of expensive and it's difficult to use. So expensive and difficult to use, that makes it a little more complex. We've got the pros and the cons listed for you here and the pricing, but I did do a little research on this just to help us to be able to kind of have this within our minds of, their data shows that they have supported roughly 10,000 nonprofits, doing 55,000 campaigns, raising $5 billion total. Okay, so that sounds pretty fantastic. Break it down, that's looking at $500,000 per nonprofit or $100,000 campaign averaging, right? You're going to have some of those that are significantly higher. You're going to have some of those significantly lower. So even if we're averaging $10,000 to $100,000 a raise, we're not thinking about taking that $10,000 out in charges, which is, if we look at the bottom, it tells us how much we're paying, several $1,000s, $3,000 transaction fee. That's going to help us get to 10,000 out of the 100,000. And that's not including the time to learn how to do it and to manage it all, right? So you need to weigh that very carefully. If you're doing events, what's your ROI on the events, especially if you're using something like OneCause to help you. You need to make sure that you are weighing all of the expenses that are going into that, and that's going to be your time. If you're someone like me who has not done a lot of this, your time is going to be way more valuable in spending time with those donors with resources as compared to learning how to do a system. That's just me personally. I'm not speaking against it. I'm just saying, make sure you know where your strengths lie. So we're going to move to the next one, which I believe is Kickstarter, which is super well known. You're not going to have many people, even myself, I've heard of Kickstarter, right? But Kickstarter, I think a lot of times we hear Kickstarter and we think of for-profits. Like, I've got this great idea, I've got this product, I've got this whatever it is, and I want people to give to it to help me to do it. So it's way more popular within the for-profit space. But it is pretty simple and it is very popular. So it brings brand awareness to it whenever you're doing it, right? Way easier for people to find your stuff. What I find interesting about this, there are limitations because of the people that are, involved in it. It's a little bit harder to be able to get something approved for what you're fundraising for. And like Jake talked about this earlier about the concept of like, just give $5 or $10. And then if we don't raise our amount, then we're going to refund it to you. That like makes me nauseous whenever I'm thinking about dealing with donors. I don't ever want for donors to be giving, and if we're not successful, then we're just going to give it back to them. Like, I get the thought process behind it. There's very little risk, but also Kickstarter is the same way. If you don't reach your goal, then you refund the money. And I think that is so painful to be able to have to say to someone, hey, this is a really great cause. We pitched it, we loved it, but we weren't successful. So go ahead and give your money somewhere else. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you're doing Kickstarter, because I just like it it rubs me just the wrong way as a fundraiser. Okay, so I did a little research on them as well. Largest raise is Pebble Time. No idea what that is. I didn't go that far down the rabbit hole, but $20 million they raised. The next is Cooler for $13 million. Average raise for Kickstarter is less than $10,000. And important to note, they have a 38% success rate. So 38% of Kickstarter campaigns that are starting are actually not having to refund their donors. So keep that in mind whenever you are considering doing Kickstarter, okay? All right, Mighty Cause is the next one, I believe, if you could move us forward. Fantastic, thanks so much. Mighty Cause, pretty simple to use and best in terms of automatic CRM integration, right? So if you are really good in your CRM, or you have someone on your team who is really good, black dog wizard, I think is the term that Jake used, it's a really good choice for you, right? But again, cons, tricky to set up. A bit of a learning curve, not the cleanest or easiest platform integration. So, you've got to learn a lot with any of these that you're going for. We've got the pricing down below, $59 per month or $99 per month. Like, all these transactionals, I get it. It's the wave of the future, but also we have to pair this with true face-to-face fundraising. Okay. So again, a little bit of research here, 150,000 causes supported through them since 2006. They raise millions, I really like this about their mission statement for a for-profit company, but they raise millions, or they just raise awareness. So I like that as well. I like that there's that key component there where they can help you to raise awareness for what you're doing. We have an organization, actually, I don't know if anybody from the organization, this client is on here, but they are largely involved in a community-led giving days. If you have ever seen community-led giving days where everyone's giving to one organization and they're funneling it out, Mighty Cause is probably behind that. They've raised about $550 million for their organizations, but averages down to $3,700 per organization. So keep that in mind. Okay. So, and like Jake said earlier, finding the pricing finding the historical data on a lot of these is difficult because a lot of them are new, and a lot of them don't want for you to be able to dial down and do simple math to figure out how much people you can actually raise as a client. They like that 550 million or that 5 billion number out there, but if you actually dial it down and apply the numbers, it looks a little different. So just keep that in mind. And again, we are big, big, big on relational fundraising. These need to be considered if the space is right for you. Like Katie said in the chat, that you've used crowdfunding, but that you identified it as a way to actually give people a platform and something they were already doing. Excellent, right? That like it made sense for that space. So now we're going to just kind of do a recap. If we can move to the next slide there, please. Bottom line. So think of yourself as a fundraiser. If you're a fundraiser, you're wearing your, like super attractive tool belt, and you've got all of these things in your tool belt that you've been taught your entire life, how to fundraise, how to sit down with people, how to build an ask, all of these types of things. This is just one tool. What we do not want to encourage you to do is have this to be your tool belt, and then all of these are tools on there. Okay. You have to do a broad spectrum of asks. You're working on annual giving, you're working on big gifts, you're working on planned giving, you're working on all these different pieces. These types of transactional gifts need to only be a portion of what you're doing to be successful, okay? Of course, we always want you to set goals that are SMART goals. So we want it to be specific and time bound. And for a lot of these, they're going to have to be monetarily bound, right? Because you're reaching a specific goal. Make sure that if you're going to do it, that you're going to be all in, and you're going to have all your volunteers. You're going to have an actual communications plan. You're going to blast it out on social media and email. If you can, have your annual gifts team do it. Have it be one of their objectives that they're doing for their annual objectives. Like if we're going to do this, we need our volunteers to run it, because it'll be more successful then. And also it'll be something that your team isn't having to do internally. Okay. And again, you need that amount to be realistic. Something else that we constantly are working with you on is setting the appropriate goal. And we want it to be a stretch goal, but we also want it to be an achievable goal, because overachieving a goal is definitely way better than underachieving, and dare I say, having to refund our donors their donor dollars. Okay. So those are some things to keep in mind. I believe at this point we are going to ask for any questions, of which I believe that Jake will probably be the answer.
Happy to. And one thing I'll say while people are thinking of their questions is I think the thing that was most successful for me in having success in this way was getting a whole bunch of people to ready, set, post on social media all at once as soon as we launched. So we communicated with dozens of people that we were going to launch this site and have it go live at like 6 p.m. we picked like a Sunday night or something where people are probably at home by their computers. It was the pandemic. We were also all home by our computers anyways. But we said, hey, we're going to all go live at 6 p.m. At like 6:03. Everybody share this on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever you want to do. So we had a bunch of people do it. And what that did was it told the algorithm like, oh my gosh, there's this link that everyone seems very interested in. I'm going to push it out to more people. So you can kind of use the algorithm wave to do that. If you push it out and say, oh, it'll grow organically, like it definitely might. But we got a huge chunk of that from pushing it out on our own social platforms by having people just share it organically. And if you do it all at once, it really does help. So try to have like a planned effort as part of the launch. Like I said, it ran for 4 weeks and that, things trickled in, but that first 45 minutes, we got like $5,000, I think. And then after that, it was like, $1,000 a day or something. So it really, really does matter to push right in the beginning. Let's look at this first question that we got here from Elizabeth. Great information from a newbie to crowd. Perfect. I'm glad you got something out of it. Like I said, these platforms, they're not great at telling you how much they cost. That's what they want you not thinking about. They want to show you all these features and like what Shauna mentioned, all this great data. You have to kind of dig on their website or have even used the platform to even get a quote on how much it costs. So we hope that getting the actual pros and cons and putting the actual pricing out there for all these platforms helps you get a little more informed. And that way you can just decide without having to do a ton of research, because it's annoying to have to go through and try to find every single price point and do the math on all of it. So glad you got a lot out of it. Any other questions before we wrap up for today?